There we
Hello?
go. We got it.
Perfect. So yeah, how you doing?
Great, man. I just finished a run trying to stay sane up in the Bay Area.
For sure. So you guys in lockdown then?
We are. Yeah, we've been in lockdown for about 2 weeks now. I've got two kids under two, so I've got a little bit in the background. So if it's too loud, let me know.
All right, no worries. So I mean, you obviously had a big time year, but I think the biggest thing might obviously of having another girl. I mean, talk about having your first daughter. What's it like?
Having my first daughter, a lot different than my son. It's awesome. She's two months old now, and we had her in January. So it was a little crazy during the middle of our season, but it's awesome. I love having a boy and a girl. It's the best.
I mean, being a father, I mean, talk about that. What's it like trying to balance being a father and still dealing with the whole basketball world?
You need to have a supportive wife for sure. My wife is definitely on board. She knew we were getting into this year with Prolific. Our high school obviously was a little bit different than a normal high school because we have such a national schedule. So the timing and the exposure of all the stuff we did required a lot of travel. So definitely needed a supportive wife. And then both of our families live in the neighborhood, so we've got some support around us. So that was great. But I love having a family, and it was great having kind of a second family with Prolific Prep. All those guys are my kids.
And so let's talk about that season. I mean, you didn't get the head coaching job to just right before the season started. I mean, what was it like kind of quickly getting in there and just getting used to the team and obviously preparing for the season?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Jeremy and Phil, the directors, for a while. They do a really good job. And so it was kind of a quick turnaround because I also run my own AAU program, Lake Show. And so we had got done with our AAU season in July. And then I knew that there was some rumblings in the Prolific Prep. So I jumped at the opportunity because I knew what kind of team they had. And I had trained with Namari Burnett for a couple of years previous to taking the job. So I knew what kind of kids they had. I knew what kind of culture they had, and it's only 45 minutes from my house, so it seemed like a really good opportunity.
And so before we talk more about the season, let's go all the way back and just talk about your career, your basketball career. I mean, you obviously
Yeah,
were also a prep player back in your high school career. You won a
yeah,
championship. I mean, talk about that.
yeah, yeah. I went to San Ramon Valley High School. I graduated 2007. I played for a legendary high school coach in John Rayner. I played with a big guy named Omar Samhan that ended up going to St. Mary's. We had a good 3-year run at San Ramon. We lost in the semifinals of state to Ryan Anderson at Oak Ridge. They were they were a loaded team, but yeah, I had a good high school career, and then played a little bit of AAU ball. But back then, it really wasn't like today with all the exposure and social media. So I ended up playing NAI basketball, which was great for me. I played at a small school called Masters College down in Los Angeles, California. Had a great career there. Played 4 years, two-time NAI All-American, and then kind of grinding my way. Like a lot of kids today want to play professionally. It's really, really competitive, especially coming from an NAI school. So I had an opportunity to try out for multiple D League teams back then. And then I had a couple opportunities to play overseas, tryouts, and then I finally got my foot in the door in Germany, and I had a great experience playing in Frankfurt and also Munich. Had a great 2-year run over there, and then kind of knew that playing was starting to get a little dry. So I came back to the States and took a graduate assistant job with Eric Musselman, who's now the head coach at Arkansas, and had a great experience there at Nevada. We ended up going from one of the worst teams in college to one of the best turnarounds. We ended up winning the CBI that year. Had a 22 win season, and that was awesome. And then kind of just kept around the game. Obviously, the AAU thing, and then this Prolific thing kind of landed me in a good position.
And let's talk about more about your college stuff at Nevada. I mean, obviously, like you said, you guys had a massive turnaround. Obviously, Coach Musselman obviously moved on now, but just talk about what it was like being a part of that program and really turning into becoming a premier program over a couple of years.
Yeah, Eric's done a great job. I've known Eric for a while. I've trained both his kids. I've coached both his kids. He's family to me, and he's a winner. I mean, the guy's won at every level. He's got stints all the way up through the NBA, and so he did a really good job turning around the culture. Obviously, they made the tournament 4 years in a row after I left, and Now he's at the University of Arkansas, but he just brings a different element to the game. He's a grinder. If you look at his staff every year, he has a really big staff because he needs all that support. Guys get a lot of player development. Guys have some very, very good assistant coaches with great tutelage, been around the game for a while. He just does a really good job of relationships with guys. And then he also has the component, which a lot of kids nowadays want, is to be able to play in the NBA. And so since he's coached in the NBA, he gives guys real advice. He puts them basically on a fast track to be able to do that if they want to play in the NBA or play overseas, which obviously are good couple options for kids. And so Eric's done a phenomenal job. Obviously, going from the Mountain West to the SEC is, it's basically the highest jump you could make because now he's coaching pros. But yeah, I mean, he did a really good job in Nevada. I was fortunate to be a part of that. Like I mentioned, we went from one of the worst teams to the best teams that year, and so very fortunate to be a part of his staff.
And being in that Nevada locker room, I mean, we obviously know some of the big names on that team, but who are you saying in the locker room kind of was the players that kind of helped orchestrate the change and really help kind of bring leadership to that team?
Yeah, we had a good senior core. We had a kid by the name of Marquise Coleman, who's our point guard, bigger point guard, 6'4", from Los Angeles. He's still currently playing in Europe. He was key to our senior core. We had a couple really good younger guys. Cam Oliver, who's a Sacramento kid, originally committed to Oregon State, and then he got hurt. And there was actually a really cool story with Cam. He was working in a grocery store, and then one of our assistant coaches started recruiting him, and he ended up coming to Nevada and he revived his career and had a really good stint with us, and played a little bit in the NBA, but he's still playing overseas now. We had another kid by the name of Lindsey Drew, who just finished his senior year at Nevada. His dad was an assistant coach of the Cavs for a while. Lindsey did a great job. We had a couple of really good players, but honestly, it was more about just a new staff coming in, kind of setting the tone and changing the culture.
And you obviously also talked about you going over to Germany. I mean, what went into that decision, and what was it like playing across the world?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I built relationships that I still have to today. We have kids that I used to coach over there because we got fortunate to some of the professionals who were in the community got to play with the kids and coach them. So that was really cool. Americans that go over there, obviously they want to speak English. And so people always ask me, "Oh, did you learn the language?" Yeah, I learned it a little bit, but every time I speak English, they want to talk to English, speak in English. So that was fun. I think any kid that gets an opportunity to play overseas, obviously it's a special time. And there's guys that play overseas for a while. I played 2 years in Germany. I had a quick stint in Italy. I've been to Spain. I've been to France. So I was kind of did my thing over there for a little while. I actually got my Italian citizenship, so I've got a dual citizen. But my advice to any guys that are, going to college and playing, it doesn't matter what level you're at. If you get an opportunity to play for money, it's an unbelievable experience. And I recommend any kid that gets an opportunity to do it.
And that's one thing I do want to touch up on too. I mean, I think that just having the opportunity to go play, I mean, even if you don't play in the NBA, you have the G League in America, but there's so many opportunities to go across the world. If you love the game, you can do and you can make money obviously doing it. That's just something that's special as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of guys that want to play, regardless of how much money you get paid. I mean, there's so many avenues to continue your career. There's a lot of guys, that we see nowadays in the NBA that went from Division III to then bounce back to Division I, and then get an opportunity to play for money. It doesn't matter if you're D2, NAI. That's kind of my advice to guys that are coming out of high school and then coming out of college. But there's a lot of avenues, Zach. I mean, you could play G League, you could play in a third league in Germany. There's so many avenues, and especially if basketball really is your passion, you could keep playing it until you obviously are injury free, but there's so many different avenues, and I loved my experience over there.
And you did obviously talk about your club team, I mean, Lake Show. I mean, what went into that decision to kind of start that up and just be a part of that program?
Yeah, I mean, me and my dad, we started Lake Show back in 2006, so I was a junior in high school. Like I touched on earlier, the AAU back then wasn't really the same as it is today in terms of just how many different, circuits, exposure, social media. I think kids really do have a huge benefit and advantage to that nowadays. But we started back in 2006, really just with the intent of getting more exposure. We played locally, and then we started, it was kind of me and my buddies, and then we started getting better. We started recruiting a little bit, and then we started playing a little bit more national tournaments. And then fast forward to today, we've been doing it for about 13 years now. I'm the director of it. He coaches a team. My brother coaches a team. So it's kind of a family thing. We've probably sent, I don't know, over 150 kids to college, whether it's D1, D2, NAI. But it's kind of just one of those things, Zach, it's our passion. We love helping kids get to the next level. We love using our relationships we built the last 15 years at the college level to help them. And so to answer your question, back in 2006, there really wasn't any circuit. So we just went out there and we started playing against teams. And then all of a sudden you're playing against Greg Oden from Ohio. You never know, right? So it was fun, and we're still doing it to today. Obviously, with the COVID virus, we're just waiting to hear when we can get started. But yeah, we're really excited about this upcoming year.
And I think, like you just said, I mean, the way AAU's changed, it's only been, 10, 13 years of truly being a thing. I mean, you just see, like, back then, like you said, you could go play up against a guy, you never really knew who he was or what it was going to be like, and now you know about a month or two in advance, this is him, and they start hyping it up. I mean, that's the way media's taken over with this. Insane.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously I tell kids, to be very mindful of what they post, because I think that a lot of coaches, obviously have social media, and they do track that stuff. So I think you could play it one of two ways. I think a lot of times it's an advantage for kids because they're getting their highlight films, they're getting direct messages from coaches. I think a lot of coaches use that as a recruiting tool. I know I do. But yeah, I mean, the social media thing is a huge avenue for kids. Obviously, Twitter has, really ramped up a lot of recruitment for kids. And so I always, like I said, I always tell my kids to really be careful about what they post, just because, you never know who's watching or who's looking at your stuff. And so I think it's a huge tool. Good point, Zach.
And when you look at AAU, I mean, what would you say has been maybe the biggest changes you've seen since you started getting the business?
Biggest changes, probably, like I touched on, just the circuit. I think that, a lot of, there's businesses now that are involved, with obviously higher profile players, which we had a couple on Prolific Prep, but I think just the financial side of, an Adidas and Under Armour and a Nike circuit. And then you've got basically a list of, independent AAU teams, which is what Lake Show is a part of. But yeah, I just think that the backing from bigger companies to be able to put on a platform for some of these players to be able to, play on their circuits. And then I honestly think, Zach, I think that AAU has always been big, but I think that all the teams now from all over the country are now playing on these different circuits. So you're getting kids from the East Coast to play against the kids on the West Coast. And I think that all these circuits have different stops throughout the country. And that helps, obviously, bring all the teams from all over to play in central locations. And so I just think it's really ramped up. I think that there's obviously a business aspect to it. We're talking about thousands of dollars on the line in terms of scholarship money. And then obviously kids that are higher profile will have an opportunity to play at the next level. So, yeah, I mean, I just think that the impact of the social media thing, obviously with the financial part. So I think it's been big.
And you touched up a little bit on, I mean, the three big ones, obviously, we know EYBL, Nike, Adidas, Gauntlet, and obviously UAA circuit. But I personally think they all can get the job done. They all get to the next level. But, I mean, what do you see for parents or people looking at the different circuits? What kind of separates them, and really what's special about each one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like it touched on, Lake Show, we've always been independent. But, every kid's different. I think that we would never hold a kid back or recruit a kid that was really getting, EYBL attention, because I do think that EYBL is definitely the best circuit in terms of level of players, and then obviously professionalism, organizational. But I do think, Zach, it's whatever fit is best for your kid. I mean, if they've grown up around an AAU coach and a trainer, and that's a good program that fits that kid, great. And I try to tell parents and kids, don't get caught up so much about what circuit it is. Because college coaches are going to find you if you're a good player. Now, obviously, if you're a higher profile player, like a top 100 player, you probably got to play on the EYBL. If you're not on the EYBL, I think that Adidas and Under Armour, they both do a really good job. We're really close with ATOP. with Compton Magic. He does a phenomenal job. And then we're also close with Ryan Silver, who basically runs the Under Armour. So, we're not partial to anything. We try to help as many circuits as we can. If we can play in one stop here or one stop here, we can. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't think it's, if a kid's a good player, you go to find what's best fit for you and you'll get found.
Without a doubt. And so now let's transition more into obviously your guys' season. I mean, as we talked about, you obviously came in a little bit before the season. You kind of established yourself as being obviously the head coach of an elite program. I mean, what was kind of your thoughts when the opportunity first approached you?
Yeah, I mean, I had to run it by my wife for sure, just because I knew the severity of just the schedule. I knew that it was going to be more of a national schedule. It's not, it's not your prototypical play 10 home games and 10 away games and then play a playoff. We played 33 games this year. We probably had, I don't know, 6 or 7 that were local. And then the other ones were spread out around the country. So, yeah, I mean, I jumped at it, Zach. I mean, like I said, I knew Phil and Jeremy. I've known they've done a really good job. I actually met them through the AAU world. And so we just stayed in touch, and I knew this opportunity was going to come up. I had been training Amari, like I said, and I knew a couple of the pieces that were on the team that were returning, Coleman Hawkins, and I knew Mawat Mag. So I knew a couple of players were on the team, and then I obviously knew they recruited Jalen Green, and I had played against him. We played against the Soldiers early in the AAU season last year, so I knew what kind of talent he was, and I just knew what kind of core there was, and I was thrilled. I mean, I knew that there was something special there, and so I think the biggest thing was just coming in and setting a tone for these guys because the higher profile players, you got to hold them accountable for things that they're not used to being held accountable for, and we can touch on our season later. But yeah, I was really excited about how the opportunity was presented to me.
And you just said, I mean, holding high-level players to their level is obviously not an easy job. I mean, that's what a lot of coaches can't do. And so when you walked into that first practice and you see a guy like Namar Burnett, you see Jalen Green, a top 3 at the time, not #1 overall player, you see a guy like Coleman, Mawat, I mean, you go down the list. How do you kind of establish that? How do you get them all in line? I mean, what do you do as a coach to get that team together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that, obviously building a culture is kind of hard to do when you haven't met some kids and you know that this is their last year in high school. So, I have Jalen and Namari, and so we had a majority of our core was seniors. So I don't think that, there was too much to do. In other words, we needed obviously a system that allowed these guys to play, right? These guys are very talented players offensively. So we put in just a basic motion that would create the ball, a little bit of movement, and then let them play. And then I think the biggest thing, Zach, from an X's and O's standpoint, was just holding them accountable defensively, because we have a couple guys that literally are very, very good defenders when they want to be. And so I think that coaches can kind of overthink it a little bit. I think what our staff did from day one and our directors, we knew the capability of some of our players' potential. And I think that a big thing was just kind of letting them play and then seeing what lineups work together. And then, from a program standpoint, these guys knew how to win. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Namari and Jalen, obviously, they made it all the way to the EYPL championship. Coleman Hawkins has been a winner his whole life. Mawat Mag was another senior we had that was tough, as just a tough kid. He ended up getting hurt his junior year, but he had won the grind session before with a different program his sophomore year. We had another kid, Falou Cisse, who's a tough kid, who's a winner. So there really wasn't too much to do, Zach, other than just holding them accountable in terms of, watching film and holding them accountable in terms of missed assignments defensively, maybe showing a clip. We try to do a good job of, and this is something I learned from Eric, is trying to translate some NBA things into the high school thing, with showing a film from Draymond Green, just defending and having 2-hand closeouts and hands in the passing lane, and really emphasizing guys at the highest level doing it at the high school level. And these guys, like I said, they can do all the stuff that we're asking them. It's just holding them accountable, making sure they're doing it consistently. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but just holding them accountable and making sure that they do the right things.
Another special thing, I mean, I'm not sure how much of an impact necessarily had on recruiting this year's team, but I mean, when you look at other schools, I mean, we see them trying to compile rosters of top 50 players, and that's pretty much the entire roster, and doesn't always work out. So You guys
Yeah.
obviously have Jalen. We know Namari. But the rest of the guys, Coleman stepped up. Frank stepped up. I mean, how
Yeah.
do you kind of get guys to come together and just build a culture like that with a different mixture of talent?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the $1 million question, right, Zach? I mean, I think that there's so many teams. We played a lot of teams this year that were so loaded with talent. Huntington Prep was a team that was really good in terms of talent, top 100 players. But there really is, from a coaching aspect, and I learned it really from Eric is, holding them accountable, like I said, but also just building relationships with the guys. I think that a new guy coming in to coach a guy's senior year, they're kind of like, at first they're like, well, do we really mess with this guy or not? And so I took it upon myself and my staff to really build the relationships with each guy. And that doesn't necessarily have to be on the court. It could be off the court. We try to do, some stuff that was camaraderie built, around the team. And because we do travel a lot, I think the guys are outside their comfort zones in terms of, a lot of guys, they really haven't. We had a couple guys that never got on a plane. We had a couple guys that had never been outside the state. So, I think it was just building experiences together off the court. And then also, I think from a playing standpoint, we tried to practice as hard as we could because we knew that there were so many practices that we could do because since we travel so much, we never really had like 3 or 4 days of practice consistently. So I always try to tell our guys, hey, man, let's really go hard for like an hour and a half and really get as much as we can out of 2 days in a row. Because really we travel, Thursday and then we play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so we really tried to do a good job, Zach, of giving them a rest. But then also when we went hard, we just really wanted to go hard for those, 1 or 2 days.
And so now looking at the next team, I mean, you said it, we know there's a ton of guys obviously move on to college now. You guys have a bunch of seniors.
Yeah.
So you have a few core pieces, obviously someone like Jordan Pope, but how do you
Yeah.
kind of build around those guys, and how do you guys kind of put a roster now to make a team that can be just as successful next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a recruiting standpoint, we have a overtime actually documented our season, and that was really cool for our guys. And I think that that's a huge aspect for recruiting. Coming out in April 26th, which everybody should subscribe to if they don't. Obviously, Overtime's a huge marketing company, but they're coming out with our first episode on April 26th, and that would be really cool. The reason I bring it up is because it will be a recruiting tool. Kids all over the country want to play in California, and I think that this show will really impact our season and show them. Just the national schedule. We played on ESPN a couple times. We played in the Hoop Hall. We played in, there were a lot of really cool tournaments. This will be really the first year of recruiting after such a really good year. So I'm not really worried about, some of the players that we're going to get. I mean, I think Jeremy, our director, he does a really good job recruiting. And I think that overtime show will really help. And then, from the grind session aspect, as a program, we had never won it. We've had several players play in the NBA. We've never got a crack at winning the championship. So I think that helps too. I think that, kids that are on the grind session and kids that are, maybe want to be on the grind session. So I think, and we haven't really touched on the prep basketball, but prep basketball is really, taking over in terms of kids that are, on that higher level side, like I was talking about with the EYBL. Kids that are higher level and want more from the high school. Prep is, and I'm not just being biased because I coach prep school. If you want to be a high level basketball player, you definitely need to be on a prep team. It doesn't need to be a prolific prep, but just in general, the prep scene is really starting to take over. And so to answer your question, I think, with our success this year, I think it'll be a no-brainer to recruit.
And you did say, obviously, a lot of people want to play in California. They want to play against the best of the best. And we do know there's quite a few other powerhouses in California itself. So, yeah. I mean, if you're a guy kind of trying to entice a recruit, I mean, what would you say separates you from maybe the other schools, such as someone like Sierra Canyon, like other schools?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Sierra Canyon does a good job. There are high schools in California that do a really good job. I think there's, we've got a few players that have played at Sheldon High School, which is a powerhouse up here. But the thing is California in general don't allow their teams to play in Geico. And so we ended up making Geico when we were going to play against Montverde last week on Thursday night. But that's a really cool opportunity. I think there's a lot of guys that, they're right on the bubble of that high major look, or even, having eyes on them for playing at the next level. that's second to none. I mean, when you're playing against IMG and Montfort and La Lumiere, I mean those are nationally renowned teams. So I think that's kind of the kicker for kids. Is we are similar to Sierra Canyon in terms of like our schedule. I mean, Sierra Canyon played a loaded schedule, but they can't participate in the Geico, and I think eventually that may change. Every state's different. But I think just the everyday, our school that our kids go to, Napa Christian, they do a really good job of catering our schedule, meaning, we travel so much, so they allow our kids to excuse themselves as long as they do their work. But the biggest thing, Zach, is these guys get to train multiple times a day. These guys have really good strength trainers. So I think that, that's kind of the kicker between a normal high school and a prep school. And Sierra Canyon, I'm glad you hit on it because Sierra Canyon does a really good job, and they probably should be a prep school.
No doubt. And so when you look at putting together these schedules, I mean, you guys do not have a light schedule at all either. I mean, what do you guys do? How do you guys plan out the schedule? What goes into that?
Honestly, Phil, our director, Philippe Doherty, does most of our scheduling. But, a lot of the scheduling this year, Zach, came from just having, top profile players on your team. I think that, tournament directors want to have an Amari and a Jalen Green and a Coleman Hawkins. And so we got invited to a lot of really cool tournaments this year. Chick-fil-A Classic was awesome. We got invited to the Hoop Hall, like I said, which are obviously, you only get there if you're a higher profile team. So a lot of the stuff just kind of shapes itself out. You just kind of pick and choose which, what caters your schedule in terms of national. And then, like I said, we're part of the grind session. So the grind session has X amount of tournaments that we have to participate in. And then they also have tournaments that we host. So we host 2 tournaments, Crush in the Valley 1, which is in January, which this year was an awesome turnout. We had 3 games in 3 days. And then we had the Crush in the Valley 2, which is in February. So we kind of sprinkle in some of our own tournaments and then also with tournaments that we get invited to. So, but that every year it's different. I think that next year, hopefully we get to play in Chick-fil-A again. There's a couple really good tournaments and these tournament directors, they do a really good job of taking care of us. So we're excited. We're thrilled to be a part of some of these tournaments. And it's a luxury to be able to pick which tournaments you're getting invited to.
And I know another question a lot of people have about prep schools is, when is it time to be able to go to that next level? I mean, some people say, should we go into junior or senior year? But for you, I mean, is it ever too early to get into prep?
Good question. No, I mean, I think every kid's different. I mean, I think that, for Jordan Pope, for example, he's a local kid, played at Freedom High School as a freshman, did a really good job, played on an independent AAU team, and he got, 2 or 3 offers. And Jordan's a great player, and he did a really good job for us this year. And I think, everybody's different, right? I think he had this sophomore year was, I mean, how many kids can say they played in the backcourt with Jalen and Amari? So I think for him, it was a learning experience. He got a lot better. And then, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, every day going against those guys is going to get you so much better. And then playing on the schedule we play on is going to get him that much better as well. So I think there's, every kid's different though, Zach. I mean, I think some kids are ready for that. And then some kids are not ready for that. And I would recommend they just play at a normal high school. You really got to really love the game and be passionate about it. And then that will determine, if you're a freshman, if you're a sophomore, if you're a junior, what's the best situation for you. But yeah, I mean, I think my advice is anyone that's looking for that, it doesn't necessarily matter about the age. You just got to really have a passion for it.
And as you said, I mean, you guys finished up 31-3. You guys got a Geico nomination, but throughout this entire season, I mean, were there maybe some of your favorite tournaments, your favorite destination places you really enjoyed going to?
Geico is definitely highlighted. Before we started the season, there were 2 things that our guys had kind of agreed on. We had never won the grind session championship as a program, so we obviously accomplished that, which was awesome. And then our second was to make it to Geico. We did get we got accepted into the tournament, but obviously with the virus, we didn't get to play there. But yeah, I mean, I think we played in Springfield College, which was the Hall of Fame, that was awesome. I mean, our guys, they really got treated well. That we played against La Lumiere, and that was a kind of a grudge match game for us because we had played them in the Chick-fil-A Classic a couple weeks earlier, and Namari was hurt that game. He got hurt in the first couple minutes. But yeah, I mean, I think that there were so many good ones. I talked about the Chick-fil-A one. We went to Arizona a few times. Obviously, Arizona's done a very good job of the prep scene. They have, between Compass and Hillcrest and Dream City, they really in Arizona prep. There's a plethora of talent in Arizona. They've done a really good job. And then we also, Zach, we got a chance to play in American Airlines Arena. We
Hmm.
played at the Mavericks Arena. We played against Lancaster on a Friday night at Lancaster, who ended up going 31-1. Their only loss was to us. They were a really good team. They had a couple top 50 players. And then the next night, we played against a really good St. Mark's team who has, Harrison Ingram. They got Collins, but they got a really good team, and we got to play them in the American Airlines Arena. That was really cool. And then we got another tournament. There's a lot of good ones. We got a chance to go back to Chicago and play in front of some family for Namari, and we got to play in front of some family for Coleman. So that was really cool. Our season was highlighted by a bunch of really good trips.
And you talk about the grind session. I mean, they've obviously kind of newer to the basketball world, but they've been producing guys like DeAndre Ayton. I mean, obviously guys that
Yeah.
you guys have had. I mean, what's it like being a part of that and just seeing how it's developed over the time?
Yeah, I mean the grind session. I've known about it. This is the first time I obviously been a part of it, but Dan and the team do a really good job just in terms of professionalism, organizational. They've expanded. I mean we played a team from Central Point in Florida in the final 8 of the grind session. They were really good, and we ended up going to double overtime with them. But Dan's done a really good job. The grind session's done a really good job of just recruiting other teams. They've done a really good job of marketing. Like I touched on, the social media thing is big for guys. And then all their games are streamed on YouTube, which is really important for individuals and also teams. And we watch film pretty religiously, and it was all off their YouTube, which was really cool. So the grind session's done a really good job. I think that they do weekly awards. They just do a really good job of kind of feeling like you're a part of their family. And so now they're actually in a position where they have to be a little bit more selective with who they let on because there's so many teams that want to be a part of it. And so, yeah, like you touched on, I mean, there's been a lot of good DeAndre Ayton, Gary Trent, Josh Jackson. I mean, there's been some really good players that have been on the grind session, and we're fortunate to be on it.
And you guys obviously won it, but the
Yeah.
playoffs got a little chaotic. We know everything was getting shut down around us, and you guys were able to go kind of filled out, playing that one day, got everything done. I mean, what was
Yeah.
that kind of like playing it by ear?
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but we played a double overtime game to make it to the semifinals, which we ended up having a rematch against West Oaks, who beat us earlier in the year. They're a really tough team from Florida. And so we had to play them on Friday, which would have been the semifinal game. And then what happened, Zach, is since the county got word of the virus, they were going to close the gym on Saturday. So they asked us if we wanted to play back to back on Friday. And so we said, well, I mean, I guess we kind of have to, right, if we want to win a championship. So we ended up playing West Oaks on Friday at about 2:00. They moved our game from 6 to 2. We played at 2:00. We ended up winning that game. It was kind of a crazy game. Teams, they got chippy and they ended up forfeiting, which probably played a huge dividend for us in the championship. So then we took a break. The other side of the bracket was I'm blanking on the name right now, but we beat a team from Brooklyn, and then we ended up playing the championship at 9:00 that night. So they ended up making us do a back-to-back game, which was crazy. But hey, it is what it is, and we knew that our guys wanted it, so that was kind of what we had to do.
And you guys were able to stay undefeated for, well, I think it was 18 games, 17 games, something like right around there. And I mean, heading into that game, obviously you guys had some injuries against La Mer, but what went into
Yeah.
that? I mean, what was it like kind of just winning game after game and getting national attention like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, the message that we had for our guys was it's all about prolific prep. It's never about somebody else, because we had so much talent. The biggest thing, Zach, was just really getting our guys to buy into the team aspect, sharing the ball, making one extra pass, diving on the floor for a loose ball. So it really was never about the other team, although we scouted and we watched film and we were obviously prepared to play against everybody that we played against, but it was never about somebody else. And so our guys did a really good job obviously against La Lumiere, who's a very good team. They ended up beating us. It was a close game. Jalen ended up almost single-handedly bringing us back in that game. But I think it was good for us to lose. Obviously losing, sucks, but it was a good learning lesson for us that, we're not invincible. And then, the schedule we played, and I know we've touched on it, but we've played such a national schedule that it really benefited our guys to just, there's no days off. There's no easy opponents. And so, just constantly having them buying into the team approach, and they did a really good job.
And you obviously had two McDonald's All-Americans on the team, Namar and Jalen. I mean, what was it like seeing them get that nomination? I know that was both their dreams, so what was it like seeing them get that?
Yeah, I mean, both Namari and Jalen are great kids. They deserve every award that they get. They're leaders of our program, both extremely good at, professional work ethics. They really want it. And then also they're just really good kids. I mean, off the court, they're great to be around. A lot of people just like being around them. They're friends with them. They follow them. They watch their every move. And so I was fortunate to coach a couple, McDonald's All-Americans. Obviously, there's not too many times in your life where you can coach even one a McDonald's All-American, let alone two. So I was very fortunate about that. But, also just being a part of their run. I mean, this is their journey, and those guys have put so much effort and hard work into it. And so they definitely they are two of our leaders, and wish them the best at the next level.
And with Jalen, we knew obviously coming into the year, he's an elite player. That was no question. But there were some things about like just how serious is he, some stuff like that. There was some stuff behind him, and he more than shut all that stuff down. And he showed why he's the number one player right now. So what was it like seeing him kind of mature and progress into becoming the player he is now at number one?
Jalen, like I said, I coached against Jalen in the spring, and there were some things in his game that I could have noticed that were not necessarily holes, but things that he could definitely improve. And one of them being just his reads and ball screens, because he's such a good player downhill. Obviously, his athleticism is ridiculous. But we put him in some ball screen reads this year, and he just got better and better. And Jalen was he did things that were on a different level in terms of how he thinks about the game. The game was just easy for him. And you could obviously see that as he plays, but just making the next read, right? I think that some kids are, they're constantly worried about what's the read about the next read. And so Jalen did a great job for us. He was unbelievable in transition. And then defensively, he actually did a really good job. He guarded Harrison Ingram in a game in November that ended up winning us the game. He did a good job defensively, and Jalen's a great kid, like I said, and he was a pro every day he came to work.
And I want to wrap up with one last thing. Just once again, you had so many guys going to the next level, and we all know that everyone playing basketball, that's their dream to be able to play at the college level. So seeing all these guys and being a part of all these guys go to the next level, I mean, what's it like seeing that?
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, it's the most rewarding thing you could be a part of as a coach, right? I mean, all these coaches that get into the industry is to help kids, right? And I think that whether it's a high major school or whether it's a mid major, it doesn't really matter. I think that, like I said about AAU decisions, even with colleges, like, find the best fit for you and go and get better, and whether it's 4 years or 1 year, or just have a good experience, right? And I think that as a coach, we try to get every ounce of energy out of a kid and try to get them so much better. And that's what the prep scene does, a really good job of, is just preparing kids for the next level. And this year we had, I might be mistaken, I think we had 7 seniors and 6 of them have signed. We still have one more kid that's, still looking for a spot, but yeah, I mean, that's the best thing that could happen, Zach. It's the most rewarding. And for me to be a part of their process and their journey is, I'm very fortunate, and wish all of our guys the best of luck. And like I said earlier, they're a part of our family, and we don't want guys to go to college and forget about us. We still have guys that come in our gym and want to get better, and that's what's part of a cool winning culture.
No doubt. Well, definitely appreciate you taking time to come on. Keep doing your thing. I look forward to seeing what you get done next season.
Thanks, Zach. Really a big fan of your work, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
Appreciate it. All right. Talk to you later, Coach.
See you, man. Have a good one.
All right. God bless.